Welcome back to the Mech Tech Tag. Today we have another custom build from the Marvel Secret Lair featuring Black Panther, Wakandan King. So, Black Panther is a green-white commander. For 2 mana, you get a 2/2 with first strike, and whenever any creature, including Black Panther himself, enters the battlefield under your control, you get to put a +1/+1 counter onto a land you control. Then, at instant speed, you can pay 3 mana to move all the counters from any single land onto a specific creature, gain life equal to the number of counters you moved, and draw a card. So what is the game plan for our Wakandan King? Well, we're going wide with a token army and a little bit of modified creature support. Let's start off that token support with Garruk, Primal Hunger. This is a 5-cost, 3 loyalty planeswalker. For +1, you get to create a token. For -3, a little pricey, you get to draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control, and with all those +1/+1 counters floating around, it should be quite a bit of card draw. And for -6, you get to create a creature token for each land you control. Following up Garruk, we have Nissa, Ascended Animist. So, 7 mana, 2 of which is Phyrexian green, so you could pay some life for it, but the Planeswalker will enter with some less loyalty for each Phyrexian mana you paid. But they are 7 loyalty naturally. You can +1 them to create an XX horror based on the number of lands you control. You could -1 them to destroy an artifact or enchantment. And you could -7 them to give each of your creatures +1/+1 for each forest you control, making your big stumpy boys bigger and stompier. Moving down into some creatures that are going to generate us some tokens, we have Adeline Resplendent Cathar. This is a 3-cost star 4, whose power is equal to the number of creatures you control. They're also vigilant, and on attack, not specifically with them, but just in general, you get to create a 1/1 human that's attacking for each opponent you have. So that's 3 triggers every combat for your Wakandan King to pass out counters to lands. Avenger of Zendikar is going to follow that up. So on ETB, they are going to generate you a plant for each land you control, and Landfall is going to beef up those plants with +1/+1 counters of their own. Kadira, Caller of the Small, is going to follow up that Avenger of Zendikar. They are a 3-cost 3/3 with Trample. Whenever they deal combat damage to a player for each token you control, you're going to create an extra token in the form of a 1/1 white rabbit. Myria Angel. So this is a 4-cost 3/3 flyer with landfall to create a 1/1 bird. Giant Adaphage is going to follow that up. This is a big beefy boy. For 7 mana, you get a 7/7 Trampler. Whenever they deal combat damage to a player, you get to create another 7/7 Trampler. Hanger Back Walker. Double X for a 0/0, but it will enter with X +1/+1 counters, and when it dies, you're going to create a Thopter for each counter on it. Hornet Queen follows that up. We are kind of playing some big mana stuff here, but we do have some smaller stuff to come, don't you worry. But for 7 mana, you get a 2/2 Flying Death Toucher. That's going to create you 4 extra 1/1 Flying Death Touchers. Jacked Rabbit. So Jacked Rabbit is an X, 1 and a white for a 1/2 with Ravenous. So it's going to enter with X +1/+1 counters, and as long as X is 5 or greater, you're going to draw a card when they ETB. Luckily, we actually don't need to pay a ton into them because we have all these creature entering, giving our lands counters, so we can move counters onto him for his secondary effect, which is that when he attacks, we're going to create a 1/1 rabbit for each bit of power he has. So 1 plus the number of counters on him. Maha Bodyguard Protector. This is a 5-cost 2/3 with other creatures we control getting +1/+1. So in a go-wide army, these Universal Lords are pretty nice. And Landfall is going to create us another 1/1 creature. Mycolith. So this is a 5-cost 4/4 with Devour 2. So for each creature we sacrifice when they come in, we get to put 2 +1/+1 counters on them. Beginning of our upkeep, we get to create a Saproling for each counter on them. So basically, survive a round, double our field presence, get a bunch of +1/+1 counters on those lands, and go to town. Queen Alenal of Rudak. So this is a 3-cost star. The power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures we control, so they are going to be big and beefy in this deck. And whenever 1 or more tokens would be created that are of the creature variety, we also get to create an extra 1/1. Rampaging Baloths. So this is a 6-cost 6/6 Trampler with landfall to create us 4/4 beasts. Back on the lighter side, we are running Scurry Oak. So Scurry Oak is a 1/2 with Evolve. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put onto Scurry Oak, we get to create a little squirrel. Of course, a token deck that cares about lands is running Scoot Swarm. So 3 mana, 1/1. Landfall is going to initially create us a little insect, but once we have enough lands, we're going to create extra copies of Scoot Swarm, and it kind of just snowballs exponentially from there. The Spring Heart Nantuko. So whenever land enters the battlefield under our control, we can pay 1 to green if the Spring Heart Nantuko is attached to a creature. If we do, we get to create a copy of that creature. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and create an insect. Tender Shoot Dryad. So this is a 5-cost 2/2 with Ascend. And at not our upkeep, but every upkeep rather, we're going to go ahead and create a Saproling. Once we have enough things to have that City's Blessing, our Saprolings are going to get +2/+2, making them pretty beefy for what they are. Moving out of those creatures and down into some spell-slugging territory, we are running Azorius Predation for 8 mana. So a little pricey, but again, we're in green, so I think we have enough ramp to get around this. For each creature our opponents control, we get to create a 4/4 beast that is going to attack them immediately. So, good way to clear a board, and also just get a bunch of creatures in to give us a bunch of counters. Pest Infestation is going to follow that up. So double X green, destroy up to X target artifacts and/or enchantments, and create a pest for each one destroyed. Arachnogenesis is going to follow that up. So basically a fog effect, but a fog effect that also creates us a bunch of spiders, which is going to, again, give our lands a bunch of +1/+1 counters that we can move around later. Call the Coppercoats. So 3 mana, but it has Strive, so we could, pump it up a little bit if we need to. We choose an opponent. For each creature they have, we get to create a 1/1. And, it's a good way to fill up the board really quickly. March of the Multitudes. So this is X green to white. It could be convoked out. And we're just basically going to create X 1/1 white soldiers. But I think we're going to have good value from it. Along with our second harvest, which is 2 and 2 green to create a token. For each token we have, we're going to create another copy of that token. We're not done creating tokens, though, because we are also running Secure the Waste. For X and a white, we get to create X 1/1 white creatures of the warrior variety. Sundering Growth is hybrid green-white, to destroy an artifact or enchantment and then populate. But wait, there's more. Moving down into our artifacts, so we have a little bit more repeatability here. We have Halo Fountain, which is our golden nightmare of the deck. We haven't had one in a while, but I think that this one is super fitting for it. So for 2 and a white, we get an artifact. We can pay a white and tap it down to untap a tapped creature we control to create a new 1/1 green and white citizen. We get to pay 2 white and tap it down to untap 2 of our tapped creatures to draw a card. And the coup de grace, we could pay 5 white, tap it down, untap 15 of our creatures, and win the game. We're also running the powerhouse that is the Helm of the Host. There's a number of creatures that this could go on and get as good value, but our commander feels like they really want it, right? Now, for every creature entering, we're getting 2 +1/+1 counters. We could have them on an individual land. We could have them on separate lands. The world's our oyster. Horn of Gondor follows that up. So for 3 mana, we get this legendary artifact that's going to create us a human when it enters. Then we can pay 3 and tap it. We're going to create a human soldier for each human we already control. And a lot of our creatures in this deck are already humans. A lot of the tokens we're generating are humans. So I think there's good value here. Oketra's Monument. So this is going to reduce our white spells by 1 generic, which is cool. And whenever we cast a creature spell, bam, 1/1 white warrior token. With Vigilance. The last of our artifacts that are going to generate us some tokens is Trading Post. Trading Post actually has a lot of versatility in this deck and a lot of value. So 4 cost comes in. We could pay 1, tap it, discard a card to gain 4 life, which we're not doing a whole lot of, but we could if we wanted to. We could pay 1, tap it down, pay a life, create a token. We could pay 1, tap it down, sacrifice a creature, return an artifact from grave to hand. And we could tap it down with 1 to sacrifice an artifact to draw a card. So it feeds into itself, and with all the creatures we have to sacrifice, it's a good way to get back any of our artifacts that happen to get destroyed. Let's move on down into our enchantments with the Dollmaker Shop / Porcelain Gallery. So Dollmaker Shop is 1 and a white. Whenever 1 or more non-toy creatures we control attack, we get to go ahead and create a 1/1 toy. And Porcelain Gallery says all of our creatures' power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures we control. And with a wide board, those are big, beefy creatures. Felidar Retreat goes ahead and walks that tightrope of doing both the kind of effects that we're kind of looking for. So for 4 mana, 3 and a white, we have Landfall. Either create a 2/2 cat or give each creature we control a +1/+1 counter, and both are good. We're also running Primal Vigor in this deck. It is symmetrical, right? It's helping us and our opponents, which I don't love, but for a budget deck, I felt like it was okay. So if one or more tokens will be put into the battlefield, we get to create twice as many. And if one or more +1/+1 counters will be put on a permanent, specifically a creature we control, twice as many as well. So moving them from a land to a creature is placing it on the creature, so it will double in transition. Rabble Rousing. So, love Rabble Rousing. This is 5 mana, 4 and a white for Hideaway 5. Then, whenever we attack, for each creature we have attacking, we get to create a little citizen token. Once we have at least 10 or more creatures, we get to play the exiled card for free. And you can imagine in this deck, we're going to hit that threshold pretty quickly. Last of our token generators is Zendikar's Royal. So this is a 5-cost enchantment with landfall, create a 2/2 beast. Let's run back up and kind of do things with these tokens we're generating, right? We're actually going to start off with the Perilous Forays. So this is an interesting enchantment that I found during the Let's Build that we did on Saturday, I want to say. But for 5 mana, you get out this enchantment. For 1 mana, you get to sacrifice a creature, search for a land card with a basic type. So, right, this could get us any of our dual lands that we need to. Put it onto the battlefield tapped and shuffle. This is fantastic. I kind of want to put it into my Beladros Witherbloom deck now that I found it, and it seems really strong here. Throwing Rites of Itlimoc, right? So this is a 3-cost enchantment. Whenever it enters, we get to look at the top 4, choose a creature to add to our hand. Once we have at least 4 creatures in the field, it will transform into Itlimoc, Cradle of the Sun. So it taps for green on its own, but it also taps for green for each creature we control, and with a large board, you know, it's going to tap for a lot of mana. This next one is a rude dude with a bad tude, and I honestly kind of feel bad running it, but like in a token, you know, generating kind of deck, it feels really strong, and that's Aura Shards. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield under our control, we can destroy an artifact or enchantment. And that basically means that our opponents will never have any artifacts or enchantments and get mad at us. Moving way up into our sorceries, we are running an Overwhelming Stampede. Yeah, there's a number of cards that you could do in this deck that have this kind of effect, but Overwhelming Stampede felt the most straightforward and is quite budget. So 5 mana to play. Each creature you control is going to get +X/+X, where X is greatest power among creatures you control, as well as Trample. So, basically, if they can't stop you, you just win, right? Huge board. We've been getting +1/+1 counters all day. You know, we're gonna have a big beefy creature and win on the spot. Following that up, we have Rosie Cotton of Southlane. So this is a 1/1 for 3. Whenever they enter, we do get to create a food, and whenever we create a token, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature other than Rosie Cotton. So using her in combination with the Scurry Oak that we added in earlier is actually an infinite combo to get infinite +1/+1 counters and an infinite Squirrel Army, all of which are great. Obviously, we're able to choose not to put the +1/+1 counter on the Scurry Oak at some point, so the loop isn't... it's deterministic, is what I'm trying to say, right? We could stop it when we want to, which is important, otherwise it would just be a draw. Kutzil Malmet Exemplar. So this is a 3/3 for 3. Our opponents can't cast spells on our turn, which is nice, right? We don't want them interfering with us. Whenever one or more creatures we control with power greater than their base deals combat damage to a player, we get to draw a card. We don't actually have a ton of card draw in the deck natively, so we're pretty happy to have it here. Kami of Whispered Hopes. This is a 1/1 for 3. If one or more +1/+1 counters be put onto a permanent we control, we get that many +1. And Kami of Whispered Hopes is going to tap for mana equal to its power. So it's always going to tap for at least that 1, but once we move a bunch of +1/+1 counters onto it, we get big mana. Jaheira, Friend of the Forest. This is a 2/3 for 3. Tokens we control could tap for green mana, which we're creating a bunch of tokens. Again, big mana for us. Gala Greeters. So Gala Greeters is a 1/1 for 2. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, we get to choose a mode that hasn't been chosen yet this turn. So, +1/+1 counter for the Gallic Reader. Tap treasure, gaining life. All of which are good, and we should be able to hit all 3 modes basically every single time it's our turn. Evolution Sage. So Evolution Sage is a 3/2 for 3 landfall proliferate. With those +1/+1 counters floating around, proliferation is strong here. Enduring Vitality. So Enduring Vitality is basically just a Jaheira Friend of the Forest for us. As a 3/3 vigilant creature. If it dies, it comes back as just an enchantment, and creatures we control can all tap for mana of any color. Last, but in my mind, certainly not least, we have the Champion of Lambhold. So Champion of Lambhold is a 3-cost 1/1. Creatures with power less than Champion can't block any of our creatures, and whenever another creature enters a benefit under our control, Champion of Lambhold gets a +1/+1 counter. So Champion is going to get big quick and make it so all of our creatures are unblockable, dealing just a ton of damage. Now, obviously, there are a ton of cards that we could have added to this deck were we not keeping a budget, things that were going to double, triple our token generation, things like the Ozolith to keep track of those +1/+1 counters should our board get wiped. But unfortunately, most of those things just aren't budget. But definitely worth adding if you already have copies. But that's the deck overall. I don't know which Avenger I'm going to do next week. If you have one in mind that isn't already Iron Man or Black Panther, let me know. Maybe Captain America. He seems kind of cool. But I'll leave it up to you guys, and if no one picks anything, we'll go with Cap. But if you enjoyed this video, felt like you got a little bit of value out of it, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, leave comments below. You know, leave it playing on repeat in the back. But I'm Mechanized Minion, the Energy King, wishing you good luck with your builds.